This is Antonio Moore coming to you from Tone Talks. I have Yvette Carnell from Breaking Brown. We're here to talk about Black Economics 101. We're here to really have a discussion about the numbers, the data, and even some solutions. You know, we often hear criticism that both Yvette and myself don't give enough solutions. I'm not sure if you'll like the solutions because they won't necessarily lead to you being a millionaire, but they definitely will be real things that you can do in your life. And then I'm also going to give you some solutions from Byron Allen, the newly minted billionaire from Black media, that he did for Huffington Post, and they don't involve you on an individual level, but they definitely involve government, and they're very, very real and poignant. And he actually gave those to Obama in his hand. I wrote a piece this week, and that piece went viral. I initially put it on Your Web. You know, I like Lee over there. He did some great work. He does great work. It also then went on to the Institute for Policy Studies, which is an economic think tank. They republished it on inequality.org, their site. That article is titled "Black Wealth Hardly Exists, Even When You Include NBA, NFL, and Rap Stars." And, you know, one of the things that I really wanted to do in this piece was sum up a lot of different data, talk about Black celebrities, and give you guys a way to really digest the reality of your situation. I got a lot of positive feedback and some blowback, and some of that blowback was unfounded, and we're going to talk about that today. You want to say anything to the audience, Yvette?
I just want to say, hey, I'm happy we're talking about this and solutions and everything that people have been asking for.
Yeah. And essentially, you know, the data point that I start off with, you know, is something that seems redundant, but everybody hasn't heard it, and it's something that we all should know. You know, Edward Wolf did the working paper, 2014. I've reviewed the paper, and in it, he actually comes to the conclusion that when you take out the family car, the couch, other durables, the middle Black family is worth $1,700. There's 14.5 million, 15 million Black families, so that means over 7 million Black homes are worth less than $1,700. In addition, I found additional data, which has shown that 50% of our families, likely the same 7 million, have bad credit. So, I mean, you combine the two, and what you end up with is people that are in a cycle of predatory lending. The second big piece of data was about home ownership. And what you see right now is a big study came out recently. And what it showed is that Black home ownership is at a 20-year low. The reason why that's important is, before I even give you the data, is that is the key element that a normal American family uses to build wealth, not a super top 1% family. So while Black people are at 41%, meaning 41% of Black homes own their home, 75% of Black white families own their home. And, you know, one of the things that's really interesting about it is even digging deeper, when you look at where Black people own their home, and I'm going to pull something up called a racial dot map right now. And that racial dot map is going to show where white people live and where Black people live. And when you look at this, the green dots, in each dot it represents a person, and the green dots are where Black people live, and it's very, very much in the South. But the blue dots are across the whole country, and particularly in your high worth areas of San Francisco. As you look in New York, if you look in L.A., and I'm going to even focus down in L.A. and show you guys like a particular home. I like to talk specifics so we can kind of get an understanding, because everybody doesn't know what's going on. You know, the Washington Post, I think it was the Washington Post, put out an article recently, and they showed that in Atlanta right now, like there are whole neighborhoods where Black people have lost money on their house. It didn't appreciate, or if it did appreciate, it only appreciated $2,000 or $3,000. This is the revisiting of redlining. It's effectively saying, well, your neighbors are Black, they're poor, you're poor too, your house didn't appreciate, nobody wants it but you. And so when you look at this, what I'm going to bring up, I want you to contrast that reality. So I'm focusing the dot map into Los Angeles. I'm going to give Yvette a chance to chime in, but I'm just kind of laying out some of the lay of the land. So this dot map, what it shows you is how we live in Los Angeles. And I always say, like, if people understood Los Angeles, they would understand race a little bit better, because this place is just brutally honest. And people would say, well, then go somewhere else. No, this place is showing you how property worked for white people. And so fundamentally, if you look at this piece of property that I'm pulling up right now, they bought this property in 1979 for $179,000. This piece of property this small house, I think it's 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, not even on an acre of land. It's less than that. It's like half acre. It's worth $1.9 million. That means that basically the whole value of the house almost is appreciation. Contrast this to so many people who bought houses in the South for $95,000 that same year, and that house is worth $140 now. So I mean, fundamentally, large swaths of like Black American homes, of the 41.7%, large swaths are in areas that didn't appreciate to create the kind of wealth that you see with just this house. This is just a normal like white person in Los Angeles. This isn't a superstar, nor is it in a superstar area, because there's better areas even than this in Los Angeles on that dot map. Anything you want to say, Devette, before I move on?
No.
Yeah,
Not yet.
All right, and the next thing I really pointed out in this article, and I really recommend you go check out the article, click the links. The links are very powerful. They're not all from me. Some are from me. Again, this article was posted on inequality.org on an economic think tank. These people check out the data. It's just data. It's not opinion. I mean, the only section that is opinion is how I feel it applies to Black celebrity and how we should see Black celebrity. But as far as like whether the data is right or not, it's just right. This is what it is. It comes from professors, economic think tanks. It doesn't come from me individually. Even the land data comes from the USDA. That's the government. This is the government's release of who owns the land in the last release they had. So you can argue with it and say, no, Black people own 30% of land. That's not what the government said. The government said that we own 2% of agricultural land in the last release. And so, like, coming back to it, the third big point that I made in this article is kind of one that challenges the very identity of what we've aspired to. Thomas Piketty released this powerful book called Capital in the 21st Century. In it, he shows a number of things about wealth inequality, but drilling it down to what I was like pulling out is, of the top 0.1% of earners, the people who are making almost all the money in America, 60 to 70% of those people are what we call corporate super managers. CEO of Wells Fargo, CEO of Chase, CEO of Apple. 60 to 70% VP of global sales for Apple are super managers. Now, where it gets to be a trip is to look at a section of that group. The S&P 500 is a section of that group. It's actually the top section. When you look at that, 1% of the CEOs of all 500 companies are Black. Just 1%. If you look at the spaces that are right below the CEO, only 2.6% of the positions that are within striking distance to become CEO are Black. Now, these people came in during the affirmative action era and were able to during like early 80s, they were able to take advantage of government requirements to actually move Black people into positions. We don't even have that anymore. So from affirmative action, we actually ended up with these numbers. We don't know what's going to happen now without that. What we do see is the signs of it, which is we can't even get in the door in a lot of places. They showed on the Wall Street Journal, like first level managers, women of color are like 7% of first level managers. That's women of all color, not just Black women. First level manager. And so like you come back to it and you start saying, well, if we don't have the money and we're not in the jobs that make the money, then how are we going to catch up? And that's really what we're about today, is talking about the reality of that scenario in a real sense. I'm going to talk about 2 more points, but I wanted you to chime in, Yvette.
No, I agree. I think what you're laying out is that wealth usually comes from wealth. It accumulates, and poverty comes from poverty. And what you have in terms of Black people who don't have access to the money, like you just pointed out the numbers about super managers. You just pointed out the numbers of these people who are within striking distance of being the CEO. So if you're not in striking distance of being the CEO, you're not one of these managers who's below the level, ready to be the CEO of, whether it's global sales of alcohol, whether it's Pepsi, whether it's Texaco, no matter what it is, then if you're not with this wealth, accessing this wealth, like where is that wealth supposed to come from? And that's the question that I asked in another video. where do you presuppose that you're going to get capital when there's no capital in your community?
Yeah, and I think that what has happened is the narrative of the $500 million rapper or the $100 million athlete has been multiplied to creating a black psyche that isn't based in any reality. So when I say that, I mean they are infinitesimal in terms of the amount of wealth in this country. What I mean is that if you look at the top 0.1% of earners again, and this is coming from Thomas Piketty, acclaimed economist out of France, in America today, 60 or 70% of the new money that's being made is being made by corporate super managers. 30% of the remaining money is being made by capital, like people that own the high rises. When you drive down the street and you see a high rise, the government don't own that. Somebody owns that high rise and collects rents. Only 5% is coming from celebrities. And those 5% are mostly white people again. I'm going to pull up a list from you of just the Billboard list. When you look at the Billboard list of earners last year, you don't see a black person until number 27, and he only made $8 million. That's J. Cole. 26 white people made a bunch of money. And again, those are just the Billboard people. Fundamentally, my point to say is that we are not making money today to make this argument of building wealth. We speak, oftentimes I feel, and this is one of the solutions, and I was going to get to those at the bottom, but one of the solutions is start to understand American history and starting to understand you can't speak as though slavery didn't happen. We often speak as though there was just indentured servitude. Reconstruction happened. We ended up with 15% of the land. We make the potatoes and the sugar. We don't make the guns. We don't make the oil. We don't distribute the oil. But we do the potatoes and sugar, and they can't do nothing without us without those potatoes and that sugar. That's how we speak. In actuality, we own 2% of the agricultural land. They own, meaning white America as a group, not just the super rich, 97% of the agricultural land, worth 98% of the money. Remember that racial dot map? It was a lot of blue in the middle. And so like what you come back to is this reality that they own almost everything. Like demos.org showed, the top 10% of white people own almost everything, and the group below them is mostly white, owns almost everything else. And I think fundamentally what you end up with is a narrative where we have to create an alternate kind of universe. And when I say that, I mean a universe where we start counting money in a different way. And one of those things that's come out of that is this idea of well, we have $1 trillion in spending power. We don't understand what that means. And I'm going to tell you what it means today. What $1 trillion in spending power means is that if I go down to Ford with $100, I might even make it $1,000 to buy a car, and they give me a loan for $30,000. I have a spending power of $30,000 with $1,000 of my own money, $29,000 of their money only to buy a Ford. But I don't have $30,000 that I can go use on land instead. We've created a narrative that we have $1 trillion in an account. And I think fundamentally we don't even understand, even that example doesn't do it service, because what you don't understand is how much of that is predatory money. Meaning, look around you and see how many, and we tend to not talk about money and numbers enough. Talk to your people, and if they will, ask them what their interest rate is on a car. A lot of that trillion is money we shouldn't be touching anyway, because it's a car at 17% interest. 50% of black families, 50% have bad credit. I'm not dealing with they should get better credit. I'm dealing with the now and what it is. And I think fundamentally we've created a narrative where you can measure yourself by how many potatoes you eat. But how many potatoes you eat is not how you measure yourself. You measure yourself by production. How many potatoes you grow and how fast you get them to market. The problem is we don't grow anything. We don't create anything, and we can't get anything to market. And I think that as a result, we just say, well, we eat potatoes fast. I'm going to tell you this, just to even take you one step further. We don't even eat potatoes faster than other people. So if you look at that $1 trillion, Asians today are at $850 billion in total spending. We're at $1 trillion too. But the trip is that we have twice the workers. So we have about 16 million workers, and they have about 7 million. So we don't even consume at a more efficient rate than other groups. And we fundamentally believe that these numbers, if we say it to ourselves enough, that it'll make us better. And then what it's doing is actually creating a problem where we don't ask and demand enough from the government, from the black president, from the Congressional Black Caucus, because we okay, and we're not.
No, I definitely agree. I think that's what we talked about is breaking down the numbers. And I don't know another community that judges themselves. Like, what sense does it make to judge ourselves by how much we consume? We shouldn't be. We're not producing anything, like you just said. And you have to think about your life. I want everybody that's watching this think about your life. Think about when you get up in the morning, you turn on the light. When you go to the shower, we're talking about natural gas. We're talking about heating. We're talking about all of that. We're talking about water. Like, all of the stuff that makes your life move is white people. You don't produce any of that. Think about when you go to the kitchen, the eggs, the cheese, all of that. This doesn't come from a black farm. It's not trucked from Wisconsin down here for your cheese. That's not how life works. We're not producers. And that's where, when you think about it, you have to have resources. When you start talking about having real money and having what comes along with the opportunity that comes along with being a member of a community that has real money, that's where it is in production. It's in resources. And I don't think we understand what it's like not to be tied to any resources. It means you're just kind of cut off from money. You're cut off from real wealth. What you have is income. And income is not wealth.
And credit.
And credit.
And credit. And the crazy part is when it's predatory credit. And so, like, it's a crazy reality that nobody has really broken that trillion down. Because I'll bet you about like 30% of it, if not 40%, is predatory. It's just predatory home loans. Predatory
so think about what you
loans.
just said. Think about what you just said. Black people are taking pride in having predatory credit. I just want everybody to let that sink in. A percentage of that is credit, and then because we're black and people target us with predatory loans, we have predatory credit, and we're walking around bragging about that. And talking about we have $1 trillion buying power. Why are you bragging for credit? That's something somebody gave you. That's debt.
Right now, what I'm going to address is, my name came up in a video. Boyce Watkins brought my name up in a video, and he misstated a lot of things about what I was saying. But the first thing that he misstated is, he said that I said no wealth exists and poor people, when I actually said black people hardly have any wealth. And you might feel that's nitpicking, but it's a fundamentally different statement. One is a statement that you can not refute. Another one is just correct. It's accurate from every study, from every economic think tank. This is what I do. Boyce has continuously brought up this position that he's an economist and I'm a lawyer and Yvette's a politician. Well, where are your working papers for your positions? Because I'm relying on data from institutes, from professors, from economic studies. I don't know what you're relying on. So it doesn't matter what your title is. It matters where your data comes from. And so you can go into my article and click every link and read. And some of them are actually like studies. And actually see that from 1984 to 2009, for every dollar that a black family increased in income, they only saw 69 cents of wealth increase. 69 cents. White family, similarly positioned, for every dollar of increased income, they saw $5 of increased wealth. From 83 to 2009. And that's before the bust. And so, like, when I give you that data and then Boyce comes back, I don't believe that. You got to make a choice for yourself what you believe. And so, if he is going to say that, you're going to have to demand just from him, from anyone else, from the president, what makes you believe otherwise? Give me some other data. Not fictional, not you're going to be a millionaire stuff. Give me some other data that shows black people made more than 69 cents. Because that's not my number. Thomas Shapiro, the leading economist in this area that wrote Black Wealth, White Wealth, did this with an economic think tank. That's where the data came from. You can click it, it's in my article. And so, like, coming back to it, what I wanted to deal with today, in addition to giving you guys Black Economics 101 is some of the statements that have been made that I don't agree with, and that I want Yvette to chime in on, see her opinion as well, so we can get to a real answer for our people, and then move to solutions. So one of the things that I hear a lot from Watkins is you can take $100 a month, and he can make your kid a millionaire by the time they're 30. All you gotta do is save $100 a month. Well, I'm gonna pull up an investment calculator just so you can kind of see it. And if you do $100 a month, understand that's $1,200 for a year, and then you just set it at a market rate of 8%. In 30 years, you don't have $1 million. That doesn't even make sense when you think about it, because your principal is like $30-something thousand. What you have, because of compounded interest using 8%, is about $100,000. That's a great return. That's presuming everything goes right with your stock picks, presuming a perfect storm. And what we just saw is in 2000 and in 2010, we saw phenomenal losses for regular people. The dot-com boom, and then the housing bust. Black people lost half of everything. People in the stock market that weren't on the end got ripped up. But I'm going to presume the 8% solid all the way through. You didn't lose half. Saying to everyday working age blacks that don't have $1,700 that you could take $100 and magically, like magic beans, make it $1 million. I don't know where the numbers come from, and I just can't agree with that. You know, what do you feel, Vet?
No, I feel the same way. First of all, I think you brought up that the numbers don't match, and that the numbers don't make sense. And even if you do that for $100 for a 30-year period, it's just not going to happen. But the second thing I would say is that making money on the stock market, even if you have the money, it's about scale. Like if you're putting $100 a month, what is Apple selling at right now? $117? What you gonna buy, like a piece of Apple stock? You gonna buy a little bit of Apple stock? Like you can't walk in somewhere and be like, let me get 3/4 of an Apple stock. You know what I mean? That's not the way it works. People invest on scale. That's how you make money.
And they invest on information, Yvette. Because like fundamentally what you see is that the stocks with the names have already, that's not where the money's made. It's in knowing about the other stocks. And I think that one of the great failures is to speak about it as though, if I walked up to you and said, you need to buy a house in America, you would say, what are you talking about? Well, that's similar to me saying you need to buy stock. That's not specific enough to tell you any kind of information of what you specifically need to do. No, tell me about a specific company that's about to come out. Tell me about what kind of product they bring in the market. Tell me about what kind of returns they expect annually. Tell me about, there's a lot of things you're supposed to tell me when you tell me to invest in stocks. And then I got to know that I might lose the investment.
Yep. And anytime you buy a stock, that's what they tell you. There's a risk, but you gotta know who's about. What company's about to buy this company. Is there about to be a merger? All of this stuff, like you say, is based on information. It's based on. That's why you see people make so much money. When you see people make killings on stock, those are a lot of times those are initial public offerings. Those are little IPOs. And you have to have a certain amount of money to even be in on that. And by the time it's on the cover of Forbes, it's over. By the time they're telling you, these people have already made their millions and they've moved on. Nobody's trying to buy a Twitter stock right now. Like, you wanted to buy Twitter when they came in, because that's when people became millionaires.
Let me tell you something. Neighborhood Works did a study. And of all ethnic groups, blacks have the highest rate of no-saving families. Meaning 47% of our families have zero savings. Only 19% of white homes have zero savings. And mind you, we have 14 million homes, they have 80 million homes. So 64 million of their families got savings, and only about 7 million of us have some, like $2, $7. And this isn't because of the next thing I wanted to squash is we need to stop telling black people that they poor because of not buying Jordans. They not poor because they bought Jordans. Am I recommending that somebody go buy Jordans? Nah. But stop talking about this like it's 96. Like people still standing at Foot Locker in 97. I'm not saying that there aren't random subsections of sneakerheads that still do that. But the problem right now is really core costs are raising exponentially. That's housing, that's food, that's transportation, that's childcare. So to sit up here and tell black people that are barely getting by because of a legacy of poverty and no inheritance and their social position in this place, that they are poor, that they are struggling because they don't spend correctly, that's a Reagan argument. That's an argument that came out of Reagan and the welfare queen back in 1980s. That's how he got into office. Now we're making it because it makes us feel good. It makes us feel empowered to think that our structural reason for the reason why we struggle is because we don't spend right. So all we need to do is spend right, and then all of a sudden we won't have 2% of land. We'll have 15%. It's not. It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way. You're not seeing black families that are struggling because they don't spend accurately.
No, I agree with you. When you look at like the 1,700 number that you gave, it's not because black people aren't spending accurately. This is because of our social position, and that's what we have to change. And what I always bring home is the only entity with the power and the money to change our social position. We're not talking about making. See, I just want people to understand we're not talking about making one man or one woman rich. It is possible that you will be a black man and you will get rich, or you will be a black. It's hard. That's a very, very difficult task. But we're talking about community uplift. We're talking about the uplift of a community. We're talking about a community that is tied to slavery, and while everybody was making money, we were in chains. So we're talking about uplifting that community.
No, we were currency. Let's go a step. Yep. We were currency.
Yep.
They said that, I did a piece on slavery. You can check it out. Just Google Antonio Moore and slavery. In it, I show we were worth more than all the railroads. Like, if you took the slaves, we were more than all the railroads, all the land, all the buildings together. Us. We were the most valuable asset America had. At the turn of 1800s to the 1900s. We just don't even, that's what you competing against a reality that your body or your grandma's body or your great-grandma's body was worth. And now, fundamentally, it's like, well, just start from here. Now, at this moment, when money ain't really what it used to be in America. You have to understand, boys kept saying that me and Yvette talking snapshots. No. He talks in snapshots. Let me tell you how. You should never bring up your grandma when you talk about money today, because your grandma lived in a time when America was rising. What do you mean, Antonio? So what happened was that during the wars, a lot of the factories were destroyed in Europe. When those factories were destroyed in Europe, what ended up happening is everybody had to turn to America because of our positioning to create things. And what you saw is the rise of Carnegie, of Chase. What you saw is that black bodies in steel mines in Alabama were used to make product that then was sent to Europe. Now, what was happening as a result is that America was rising as a whole country and crumbs were falling. So, your grandma might have caught a crumb. There's no crumbs falling right now. What's happening right now is globalization. So in India, they don't want to make iPhone. In China, they don't want to make iPhones for $1. In India, they don't want to live under the Sikhs and under their caste system they've been living so long. And as they stop wanting to live that way, what you see as a result is we have to live worse, meaning we, particularly African American people. And what we're doing is we're saying, well, my grandma in 1950, was able to buy a house, so should I. That makes no economic sense. It makes as little economic sense as comparing the $1 trillion in economic spending in the U.S. to the GDP of a third world country. I mean, I can't even explain to you other than to say that's like comparing a number with a shape. That's all I could tell you. Comparing the $1 trillion in economic spending that blacks are given to churn the economy in the U.S. with the GDP of countries to make yourself feel good is like comparing a number with a shape. It's that bad. And I feel like when you come back to it, what we're dealing with is we need to get informed. I'm not saying you got to follow my logic. I'm just telling you I'm right. I'm telling you that there's a reason my stuff is on economic think tanks, because it's right. It might not feel good, but it's definitely a way for you to start dealing with where we're at, because we can't go nowhere until we know where we're at. How do you feel, Yvette?
No, I can't agree more. I mean, I can't agree more in terms of where we are, in terms of, you don't think, you also, when we were talking about, you said boys can't use his grandmother. Another reason why you can't use a boomer or somebody older who came through that time is because, you have to consider NAFTA and the cheap goods, right? So your grandmother didn't even have access to all of what you're talking about. I mean, we're talking about a time where a lot of black people during segregation and all that stuff didn't even have access to white product. especially white cheap products. You didn't have marketing. Marketing, you think about this laptop. When I turn on my computer, somebody's marketing to me because that's what I'm here for. I'm supposed to be a consumer. So they're always targeting me and marketing to me. This is a totally different world than someone who grew up in the era of Voices Mama or My Mama or anybody else. So you can't use that as a barometer for what's going on now. You have to understand timing.
Even think about this. When your grandmama was alive, you know, my great aunt grew up in Brooksville, Mississippi. Brooksville, Mississippi. There was one phone for 8 families. And like you could pick up the phone at any time and listen to somebody else call. So you had to really hope, like make sure nobody was listening in another house to your call. Because only one family could be on the line at once. And what you realize is in that world, when you got a chair made, that chair lasted 15 to 20. That was the chair. That's it. We live in a world where they give you an iPhone and you can keep it clean, not crack the screen, not drop it, not put no water, and they make it not work in a year and a half to make you buy a new one. I got an iPhone 6. I ain't never dropped it. It was working just fine. When the iPhone 7 came out, I didn't even download the 10 update. It just started like you can't scroll as good. We live in a world where they are making us basically have to spend. And to blame black people for being part of that American culture is so wrong. We were brought here as slaves. Jim Crow followed that. And following that, we had mass incarceration. To think that we're so far away that now we can wealth build and not deal with the reality of what this place is. It's ignorant. That's all I'm going to say to you. And so I come back as we start to come dovetail to the end. And I want to talk solutions. But before I talk solutions, I leave this section. I just want to say one last thing. I did this way because I asked Boyce, could we have a debate? Boyce said, no, just talk to Yvette and put it on the channel. That's for everybody that's going to say, oh, you should have had this with Boyce. I offered that to him. But I felt it was correct just to address some of the things because my name was brought up. And also some of the facts that I said were misstated. You know, the last point that I wanted to make is I kind of got an issue with the whole reality of black people need to not waste money and buy Jordans. When you look at so many of these people's sites, including Boyce Watkins, Boyce is selling shirts for $29.99. That's the price that Nike sells shirts for. How can you sell shirts and then get mad at Nike because they sell shirts better? And so, and they shirts is dry fit for $29.99. I think that fundamentally we just got to get honest that if we want to cut of the pie, we can't be mad at other people who also want to cut of the pie. Am I saying this right? I'm just saying, I'm not saying I have an opinion on it. I don't sell shirts to y'all. But I'm saying that the person that does sell shirts can't make a judgmental call on Nike to me.
Well, can't make a judgmental call on why'd you buy the Nike shirt, but you bought my shirt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like either way is $30. Either way, if you're telling black people to save money, $30 is $30. Whether you buy the $30 shirt over here or a $30 shirt over there, that black person is still out of $30. So if you don't want black people to spend, you just really don't want them to buy anything. You really want them to try to do everything they can to keep their money, except for essential items. You know, soap, water. Things that we gotta have. So if that is your philosophy, then and they shouldn't buy a shirt, and most of us don't need a T-shirt. Then, I think sometimes it can be, looked at as a bit hypocritical in that way.
I feel like right now where we're at is black people need to really step back and make an evaluation of themselves. And that self-evaluation will allow them to have peace in their heart, peace in their mind. Now, moving to solutions, I have 4, and then I did a piece with Byron Allen. You know, Byron Allen he's suing Comcast, he's suing Charter. You know, he had the AT&T settlement. I did a piece with him on the 8 solutions I'm going to share with you because they're all involved him dealing with, say, Obama or Clinton. So you can take it how it means and feel like you can be part of it, but they really don't involve like individual choice. And I'm in agreement, and I think it kind of goes with Yvette's point, that this is a mass systemic like change that has to happen. My solution for you on an individual level is first, stop blaming yourself. Realize the history and the economic impact of being black in this country. I think everybody presumes they know, but when you say so quickly, give me a solution, that tells me, you ever had a kid and you tell them to go do their homework and then they come back in like 10 minutes and say, I'm finished, I'm going to go outside. Well, you tell me that you want a solution in like an hour. You ain't read my article. You haven't read the links. You should just do that. That's a solution. Become informed about what's going on around you so that you can tell your kids what's going on around them. And they don't feel, I didn't make it in this life or I wasn't good enough. That's not what's going on right now. You know what I'm saying, Yvette?
I understand exactly what you're saying. And this is something that's happened for a long time. There was a poll a long time ago, a few decades ago, that 44% of black people blame themselves for not achieving. So what I will say is that this is nothing new, this sort of self-blame, if we could, if we should. But then we also have a political history in this country of fighting against that sort of Reagan-esque, that sort of conservative idea. We fought that for a very long time to protect affirmative action and to protect what we want. And I just want to add one thing. Let me just say this one thing and we can get back to solutions. I'm just kind of tired of hearing black people say government has never done anything for us. Like if government has done all this time, it ain't done nothing. We wouldn't have a middle class at all if it went for affirmative action. You know, over 50% of black elderly people would be poor if it was not for Social Security.
We wouldn't even have no blacks that went to college. Ain't nobody paying cash.
No. You went to college. If your mama didn't pay for your schooling when you went to school, if your mom and dad didn't come to school and write out a check, then that was government doing something for you.
Not a loan, not a plus loan. I'm talking about a check. This is Howard is 43,000, and it's a few blacks, very few that happened for. Number two,
how do you have student loan debt and say government never did anything for you? They paid for your school.
Yeah, my second thing is really one of the things that Google is allowing us to do. You know, a lot of the people that I see on the internet, they continuously think that the internet is about creating fairness. It isn't. But one thing it does do is allow you to get information on how wide the inequality gap is. It doesn't create fairness. It actually enhances it.
Are you telling me, Antonio, I can't go online and learn something and compete with, people? I can't compete with Silicon Valley with stuff I find online?
No, what I think you can do is actually become informed on how and what Silicon Valley really is in terms of like the wealth, the resource, the familial connections, how they come to be successful. One of the things that I tend to do is reverse engineer successful people. But what other people do is they just look at us, you can be the next Bill Gates in the making. Bill Gates is a combination of timing, luck, and those parents. His dad was the #1 trademark attorney in Seattle. His parents had him using computers before everybody could get a computer. And then timing means he was perfectly timed to take advantage of the computer boom. That's what Bill Gates is. So to tell yourself today that you could be the black Bill Gates, it don't make no sense. You're not saying anything that is based in any logic. And so I feel like the internet, when you really open it up, it can explain blackness to you if you don't know what it is. And so many of us don't know. And that's clear from the answers. We believe blackness is what we saw in the Cosby Show going forward. This was a little moment like Reconstruction. It was very similar to Reconstruction. They snatching all that back. There's a reason that so many of us are driving Uber and Lyft and selling Herbalife. I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm saying it in a real way. It's because we have to. Everybody's not out here. Stop telling black people that they out here wasting. America is all about waste. So stop blaming black people for being American. Next thing, create realizable goals, not vision boards. What do you mean, Antonio? All right, you got a child in your life. Stop putting up pictures of a yacht with Jay-Z on it and looking at it all day. Go in the other room, get your child, and go to the park down the street and watch her play in the grass. These are things that are within your control. So, if you don't like that solution because you want to know how to get the yacht, you just want a lottery ticket, and I'm not going to give you that. And so this is solutions. I ain't never did this before for you guys because I know you don't want to hear it. But the solution is stop taking vision boards of some island and staring at it every day. Am I saying don't go to the island? Not necessarily. But you ain't got to stare at it every day. You got life around you right now. But I live in the ghetto. I'm from nothing. You're not from nothing. You live somewhere with trees. You live where ain't no bombs dropping. As people would say, well, they shooting every day. You know, if you believe that, I understand. If you're in Chicago, I feel for you. But I'm gonna say this: I'm in South Central right now, and I got a park across the street. And after we finish, I'm gonna go jogging. But I live in South Central, Los Angeles, where Boys in the Hood was. And so we in America, and what you can take advantage of is some of the resources that America has at our disposal. You know what I see in the park a lot of times? Latinos with their kids. I don't see enough of us in the park with just your kid, getting away from all the other stuff and just being at peace with yourself. Next thing is Byron's 8 solutions. So Byron Allen did these 8 solutions. You can actually go on the internet, Google it, Huffington Post, 8 solutions to fix the Great American Crisis. Have you seen these before, Yvette? I think I shared it with you.
Oh, yeah, you showed it to me.
All right, so he gave us 8 solutions. I think you guys will like them because they're all real, but they don't involve you guys. They don't involve us. I mean, to the extent that we all need to be aware that this is what we need to push for, but they aren't something necessary that you have power over. You can just demand a review. His first thing was education reform. So we need to be guaranteed that our kids will get good educations, and that comes from the government. Number 2, ensure that we get access to non-predatory home loans. That means no subprimes. The problem is you got to have a down payment on a non-predatory home loan, and you got to have good credit. So that cuts off 50% of our families, maybe even 60 to 70%. But like, this is what we need. We need access to non-predatory home loans. Number 3, audit the banks and mandate that they make business loans to African American owned businesses. Just a threat of audit, in his belief, would lead the banks to open the coffers in a substantial way for black businesses to finally hire more than one employee. How many businesses have more than one employee? Black businesses in America? Yvette?
Only 90% are self-employed.
What does that mean? Like, when you say that, one employee?
No employee. Just the person who runs the business.
So 90% of black businesses are just that person.
Just that person.
Okay. Next thing, number 4, make the internet free. Somebody would say, similar to John Lewis about college, like, they can't do that. That's not your job to say what they can't do. He's saying make the internet free. This guy's a billionaire. They can make the internet free for poor kids. Without the internet being free, you can't even, like, they charge you so much for the internet for poor people that essentially it keeps you in the hole. You gotta, like, I remember the early 90s, you didn't even have to have the internet. Now you have to have the internet for your kids to be competitive. You gotta have an iPad. Then the iPad don't work no more because, you know, it went bad or something like that. It's just so much to keep up with that for poor people, you gotta have government do certain parts of it, like make the internet free. Make the internet free. So number 5, equality and justice. What do you mean? The mass incarceration system is so awful. I mean, I don't want to get off topic, but the number of African American men incarcerated is something we've never seen in any country in the history of the world. We need to get our black men back on their feet. We need our black men being part of active community, having jobs, building things. Being part of families. So, that's inequality, equality, and injustice. Number 6, government economic inclusion. Make sure 100% African American owned media participates in your $2 billion advertising budget, such as join Army, join the Navy, join the Marines. This is nothing new. This is how we had Ebony in essence. He broke it down for me. Like, white businesses have never wanted to deal with us that much. They relied on like these budgets from Go Army and all that. They cut all that to our black media companies. We need those back because we can't compete on just straight up. Because we don't have, and somebody will say, oh, Antonio's saying that black people can't compete with white people. No, I'm saying that they got all the money, you're competing against all the money.
So you're saying, what you're saying is that money can't compete against no one. Like, how does that not make sense?
Yeah. It makes sense if you make it about black and white and you don't know the racial dot map. Let's pull that back up again. And the racial dot map shows this is white people and this is black people in the corner. So, nonetheless, the point is just to say, government economic inclusion. Give us some contracts so we can start these black businesses again. Because there was a moment where we had, similar to Reconstruction, some black businesses. Number 7, access to capital. President Obama, this is from Byron Allen. President Obama, you control approximately $1 trillion in government worker pension fund money. None of that capital is being managed by people in the African American community or invested with entrepreneurs from African American community. Access to this capital will provide much needed jobs. Make these pensions invest in black people instead of investing in big S&P 500s. You know, these pensions, what they're doing right now is because they're not getting enough return on straight like bonds and all that, safe investments. They're investing in just major companies. And you competing against them with $100. What you think you're going to do? And so, number 8, stand up to corporate institutionalized racism. And when he says that, he means like his lawsuits against the cable companies, which he makes the strong argument that they don't do business with black companies, with black-owned media. They only do business with media that's either owned by white companies that's targeted at black people, like BET, or that black people have small fractional ownerships in, like Aspire, or like that's Magic Johnson, or Revolt, that's Puffy. They're not the major owners. I don't even, he was trying to get the data on what percentage they own, but they're not the major owners. And so, I appreciate everybody listening. I don't mean this in no negative way. This is not meant to as a takedown, but this is meant as a Black Economics 101, so that we can get the data and stop talking in a general way and start really working towards a positive solution. You want to say something, Yvette, on the way out?
No, I think you said everything that needs to be said. I think you laid out the data in a way that is undeniable in terms of what they need to do. And I think you can't look at that and say that there are no solutions. The solutions don't always involve, us having a Bentley or us looking at other people and making them feel bad. I heard a Kanye West song, "Don't you see me in the private jets flying over you?" That's kind of despicable. That's what we've become, that we're people that just want to see ourselves as better than other people. Like, and not understand the consequence of blackness and what that means. I think you do have to kind of take a step back and say, I do want to work hard, whether I work hard in my job or, if something else, if we do get the government to move. But I think you have to take advantage of where you are. I think you have to enjoy where you are. I think you have to. Doesn't mean you can't be successful, but you can take a hot shower right now. That's a good thing. A lot of people can't do that.
And appreciate that. Appreciate that the Lord bless you with that. Well, we're going to end on that. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope that everybody can comment below.